Welcome to Lansing from a New Perspective with Senator Patrick Colbeck. This program comes to you from Lansing to keep you up to date on issues that impact Southeast Michigan. This week, Senator Colbeck helps you get as much information as possible regarding the ballot proposals on the coming November 6th election. This program is not intended to advocate or oppose any of these proposals. And now, here's Senator Colbeck.
Welcome to this edition of Lansing from a New Perspective. My name is Senator Patrick Colbeck, and today what I'd like to do is go over the 2012 ballot proposals. There's quite a few of them on the ballot this year, and I just want to make sure that you have a good overview of what those ballot proposals do and what they don't do, and how you can go find more information about those ballot proposals. There's a total of 6 of them, and the Proposal 1 is the only one that's not a constitutional amendment. That's actually what's referred to as a referendum. The other 5 are actually constitutional amendments. So we're going to go through each and every one of them here in series, but it's very important that this election is not simply a matter of voting for candidates. There's a lot on the line from the state of Michigan perspective and our future posterity that needs to be evaluated. And you, as a responsible voter participating in the democratic process, will make the difference and be able to set the course forward on what kind of a state we're going to be going forward based on your vote on these ballot proposals. So it's very important that you do due diligence and understand exactly what you're voting for or voting against. All right, first and foremost, we got an election coming up and want to make sure that you're registered. What you're seeing here is a little slide. This is what happens when I log in and check to see whether or not I'm registered or not at michigan.gov/vote. You can go in and type in your name and your address and your date of birth, and it'll go off and provide a sample ballot for you to go off and review. And it'll also confirm whether or not you're registered or not. So if you're not registered, you won't see that sample ballot yet, but you will get an opportunity to go off and register to vote. Now, I gave a quick preview earlier of the different ballot proposals. Here's just a summary of them. Proposal 12.1 is referred to, or you'll also see it listed on signs and marketing materials as Proposal 1. Proposal 1 is a referendum on Public Act 4 of 2011. That's also referred to as the Emergency Manager Law. Proposal 12-2 is a proposal to amend the state constitution regarding collective bargaining. Proposal 12-3 is a proposal to amend the state constitution to establish a minimum threshold for the amount of electricity generated by clean renewable energy sources. Proposal 12-4 is a proposal to amend the constitution to establish Michigan Quality Home Care Council and provide collective bargaining for home care workers. Proposal 12-5 is a proposal to amend the state constitution to limit the enactment of new taxes by state government. And Proposal 12-6 is a proposal to amend the state constitution regarding construction of international bridges and tunnels. So there's a total of 6 of those ballot proposals on the ballot this year. I can't emphasize this too much, but the language that you see for each proposal that appears on the ballot is not the actual language that gets codified into law. All that you see on the actual ballot is a 100-word description. It's a summary, if you will. It's a series of marketing bullet points that try to give you an idea of what's in or not in the bill. To be really responsible in your voting, I highly recommend going to the petition language that's filed with the Secretary of State. That actually contains the actual law or constitutional amendment proposal. When I vote on bills in the Senate, I actually look at the actual bill. I don't look at the summaries. It's important for you, since you're voting in this process this time, to actually read the actual bill or the actual law or constitutional amendments being proposed. Because many times, at least from my perspective, they're not necessarily consistent with the 100-word description that appears on the ballot. So you need to go into that detailed petition and see the actual legal language that will be the law of the land if a given proposal is adopted or not. And then there's a third component that goes into evaluation of any of these ballot proposals, and that is the analysis of what are the actual impacts associated with the passage of a given proposal or the denial of a certain proposal. And this includes assessing the financial impact of the proposal as well as the legal impact. And And a lot of the proposals that are out there right now, you won't see any of those impacts summarized in the actual ballot language. You need third parties to go off and provide that assessment. And thankfully, there is a third party that we'll go over in a little bit that actually does provide some of those analyses. So I'm going to kind of, in summary, there's really three components that need to be considered when you cast your vote on these proposals. First of all, you can look at the actual ballot language, which shows a 100-word marketing description that appears on the ballot. That's not what actually goes into law. So if you want to find out what actually goes into law, you go to the second component, which is that of only found in the petition language. And to find that petition, we're going to show where you can get access to it, but it's in that petition language. It shows the actual law that we're evaluating, the actual wording of that law, or the actual wording of the constitutional amendment. And the last element of it is dealing with that petition language. Even the petition language will not say what the financial impacts of a given proposal are or not. There could be billions of dollars worth of impacts associated with it. There could be significant tax increases associated with it. And as a voter, the only way you find out that information is by going off and pursuing third-party resources to go off and investigate that. And we're going to provide a link to one of those third-party resources in one of the future slides here. All right, so first thing I want you to be able to check into is that if you've gone off to the Michigan Secretary of State site and you've gone to michigan.gov/vote, if you actually are able to call up a sample ballot, here's what the sample ballot will look like when you get to the section that deals with the ballot proposals. So all you're going to see here, what's represented is this 100-word summary of the ballot proposal. That's all that you see on your ballot. Now, when you're online and going to michigan.gov/vote, you actually notice that there's a little, next to that arrow up on the top, there's a little link that says that you can view more detailed information about the ballot proposals. When you click on that link, you go to the next slide here, or to wording that you'll find here, and what it does is actually goes to a very good site put together by the Citizens Research Council of Michigan. And what they do is kind of in a one-stop shopping center, put together a summary of the actual wording that will appear on the ballot for the particular ballot question. That 100-word description will be there. It'll also include the petition with the actual referendum or amendment language that's actually embedded in the site as well. And it'll actually also include an analysis by Citizens Research Council of what the real impacts of that ballot proposal would be if it were adopted. So it's a very useful site. I encourage you to check it out, and you can also go to it directly by going to crcmichigan.org/election. But I really encourage you to check that out before casting your vote. All right, now if you want to go to the Secretary of State site, it's a little bit difficult to find this, but if you want to find the petitions as they're actually posted up on the Secretary of State site, it's kind of buried. That's why I didn't provide the full URL or website address. If you go to mi.gov/SOS, if you go to the Bureau of Elections section of that site, you'll actually be able to drill down to the bottom. I've outlined it for your ease of viewing here, and you have to go down to the bottom of the page and look at the links to the actual petition language. In there, there'll be files that you can download to your computer and view the actual petition language as it was submitted to the Secretary of State and the State Board of Canvassers. That's the only place where you can actually find the actual law that would go into place should you vote yes on a given proposal. All right, now we're going to go into the proposals one by one and go over. I'm only going to summarize really what happens on the actual ballot language. I'll give you a hint as to what some of the details are so you can get an idea of whether or not it's complex or simple in regards to the actual ballot, petition language. But right now we're just going to go through and start off with Proposal 1. And this is the language that will actually appear on your ballot in regards to Proposal 1, or also called Proposal 12-1. And this is just a reminder, this is a referendum on Public Act 4 of 2011, otherwise known as the Emergency Manager Law. And I'll let you read this. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but this is really just a summary of essentially the 4 phases that we've instituted via the Emergency Manager Law. And on that Emergency Manager Law, we essentially took the old PA 72 law which was called the Emergency Financial Manager Law, and added a couple of phases to that law to mitigate the risk of actually having to put an EM into place. Now, here is an example. You can see this nice little microfiche stamp on the right here. That's the actual Emergency Manager Law. Now we're going to do a quick little blow-up of it so you can see that that's what it actually looks like. But the Emergency Manager Law itself is, as you can see, is quite complex. There's a lot that goes into it. When you click on that, on the actual petition language, this is the information you'll be able to get access to. Okay, the next proposal we want to go over is that of Proposal 2. This proposal would amend the state constitution and provide some unique rights around collective bargaining that are not actually codified into law at this point in time. In particular, this affects public unions and essentially bars the state legislature from enacting any legislation or reforms that would restrict or infringe upon collective bargaining rights as they're currently stated. Another aspect of this law was that it would make the prospect of workers' choice or right to work legislation coming out of the state prohibited in the Constitution. The National Labor Relations Act, which was signed in 1935 out in the federal government, and then later amended via the Taft-Hartley Act in 1947. Essentially, that provision of the Taft-Hartley Act for the National Labor Relations Act would be null and void for the state of Michigan via this constitutional amendment. The actual wording of this amendment, as you can see, is quite a bit more complex than the actual ballot summary that will show up on your ballot. There's a lot of information captured in there. It's adding new rights to the Constitution up in Article 1. Also, I believe it's in Article 5. There's additional rights and provisions added to the Civil Service Commission, a section of the Constitution. People should read that and make sure that they understand that very clearly. If this were adopted, Michigan would adopt provisions in our Constitution that no other state in the Union adopts. Proposal 12-3, it's a proposal to amend the state constitution to establish a standard for renewable energy. Now, for background purposes, the state of Michigan currently has a statute in place that requires that 10% of our energy is generated from renewable sources by the year 2015. This proposal would go beyond statute and put into our Constitution the requirement that at least 25% of our annual retail sales of electricity would be from renewable energy sources, specifically delineated as wind, solar, biomass, and hydropower by the year 2025. To my knowledge, this is the only provision of our state constitution that actually specifies a time threshold for a specific provision of the Constitution. The detailed aspect, when you go to the actual petition language and the language that would go into the actual Constitution, as you see, is not as complex as what appears in Proposal 2, but it's still worthy of a serious read by you before you make your vote. I encourage you to check out that detailed petition language on Amendment 3 before casting your vote. Let's go on to Proposal 4. Now, Proposal 4 is a proposal to amend the state constitution to establish the Michigan Quality Home Care Council. Essentially, what this amendment seeks to override is a series of legislation put in place to protect home health care workers from having union dues taken out of their Medicaid payments. So if you're taking care of your loved ones at home and you're receiving Medicaid, there would be now dues extracted from these service providers at home that wouldn't have been done before. We had passed legislation in the state Senate and in the state House and signed by the governor that would preclude this practice. What this proposal seeks to do is override those statutes and actually enshrine in the Constitution the forced unionization of home health care workers. I ask you to give this serious consideration when you look at the actual detailed amendment. As you can see, it opens up quite a few sections of our Michigan Constitution, requires a thorough read to go off and do that assessment. I encourage you to check out those details before casting your vote. Proposal 5 is a proposal to amend the state constitution to limit the enactment of new taxes by state government. Essentially what it does is puts a 2/3 vote requirement or a majority vote requirement, sometimes called a supermajority in the state House and state Senate, anytime that the legislature seeks to raise taxes or increase the rate or institute a new tax on the citizens of Michigan. The actual detailed proposal wording on this is actually pretty straightforward. It's very similar to what you see in the actual ballot proposal summary, and but I still encourage you to actually read the actual proposed amendment language and encourage you to check that out before casting your final vote. The last proposal is a proposal to amend the state constitution regarding the construction of international bridges and tunnel. Essentially what this vote does, it doesn't authorize a new bridge or a tunnel, and it doesn't deny a new bridge or tunnel per se. What it does is say that before we decide whether or not we're going to do that international bridge or tunnel, it should require a vote of the people. That's pretty much all the language says. If you open it up and go into the details on this, there's a little bit more detail there than what you see in the actual summary. Once again, I encourage you to read the detailed petition language before casting your vote on Proposal 6. So we've gone through Proposals 1 through 6, and if you want to actually see that wording up close in a way that you can download, print off on your computer, or get access to, there's a couple different links that you can go off to. If you go to michigan.gov/vote, that's where you can get hold of that sample ballot. And also you can go to crcmichigan.org/election. That's where you're going to get that detailed breakout that we saw earlier that shows you not only the 100-word ballot proposal or ballot description of the given proposal, it also shows the detailed petition language, and it also provides you with an analysis of the financial and legal impact of a given proposal. Also, many of you may have received this in the mail from my office. It's a summary of the ballot proposals. In addition to the materials we covered today and that you'll find online, we also provided a pro and con summary for each of the ballot proposals. It's nonpartisan. We just go off and try to break it out and give you the information that you need to make an informed choice. This is still just a summary, though, and there's no substitute for going off and reading the detailed petition language, the actual law that would be put into place, and also supplementing that information with analysis of what the real fiscal and legal impacts would be. All right, now, so welcome to my world. You've had a nice little overview of all the ballot proposals that we're going to be faced with on this year's November ballot. I encourage you that if you're an absentee voter, obviously go apply. Make sure that you get your absentee ballot sent to you and fill it out at least 4 days prior to the election, which is November 6th. And remember that if you are not voting absentee, please go to the polls on November 6th and exercise your right to vote. That right to vote was won at a hard price by our servicemen and women and all of our veterans. I ask you to honor their commitment, their sacrifice by going off and exercising your right to vote on Tuesday, November 6th. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this edition of Lansing from a New Perspective.